Muy buenos días. Muchas gracias por todos por conectarse a nuestra capacitación de cómo hacer negocios en el Reino Unido. Antes de empezar, les presento a nuestro director de la Oficina Comercial del Perú en Londres, el señor Ricardo Romero.
Buenos días a todos. Good morning, Gerald. Thank you for coming this morning and joining us to this meeting, or this presentation actually. Quisiera ante todo agradecer a todos los participantes por acompañarnos esta mañana para una serie de capacitaciones que estamos ejecutando entre el mes de diciembre y el mes de enero del próximo año, con el objetivo de dar un poco de información a las empresas peruanas de cómo hacer negocios en el Reino Unido, ahora que estamos en una coyuntura en el que el Reino Unido sale a partir del 1 de enero por completo de la Unión Europea. Y segundo, también porque una de las cosas que nos hemos dado cuenta en estos últimos meses de que hemos comenzado esta gestión en el Reino Unido es que el Reino Unido no es un país o no es visto como un país natural dentro de la Unión Europea. Nos parece que los países más naturales para Perú en relación a la Unión Europea es principalmente España. Entonces se desconoce un poco la dinámica de este mercado y queríamos compartir con ustedes información, habiendo invitado a un experto de una empresa que se llama Retail Mind. El expositor, su nombre es Gerald Futter. Él es un experto en la industria de alimentos, tiene más de 26 años de experiencia, habiendo trabajado como comprador de alimentos senior en Asda. Asda es un supermercado muy grande en Estados Unidos, perdón, en el Reino Unido, que es del grupo de Walmart. Yo creo que él tiene mucha experiencia en la industria y creo que puede compartir con nosotros información sumamente valiosa que a nosotros particularmente en esta oficina nos importa que ustedes conozcan, porque vamos a trabajar el 2021 el sector pesca y queremos que tengan algunos alcances que sean relevantes para ustedes. No quiero extender más mi presentación. Una vez más los agradezco y los dejo con Gerald para que comience su presentación. Gerald, thank you so much for being here this morning. And so the mic is yours.
Thank you very much. And welcome to everybody. And nice to, I can't see you, but I'm sure I'll be hearing from you shortly. What I'd like to say is the presentation that I've got today will be focusing on the retailers, in particular then focusing on how you work with them and different elements to that. If you have got any questions at all, then please use the Q&A. Any questions, and I can answer them as we go along, or I can answer them at the end. So I'm happy to do it in either way at all. So just looking at who I am and what my experience actually is. So I've actually been working in retail for over 27 years. I've worked in the store, the biggest retail where most of my career is at Asda. As Ricardo says, they were part of Walmart whilst I was there, and now will be independent again. And I worked in 3 main categories. So I worked in beer, I worked in grocery, and I worked in frozen food. And actually when I was in beer, which is my first category, I actually did import a Peruvian brand. So that was one of the first things that I did. But actually it was in frozen food where I got all my experience of seafood. And one of the things that I did is I traveled extensively, looking at new markets. And I was looking at new markets and looking at suppliers, in particular for seafood, prawns, salmon, mussels. So I traveled in North and South America and also in Southeast Asia as well, looking for the markets and how I could actually get those products into the UK. So it is a category that I have been working with and still work with suppliers in, probably for the past 10 years. What I do now is I work with suppliers. So I work with suppliers to help them work better with the retailers. So it's understanding how they can work better. And it's also looking at all the different things that do that. So it is actually both negotiation skills, selling skills, commercial skills, consultancy. It's looking at how you can work better. Now, what we're going to focus on today, obviously, is seafood. The important thing for you to understand for the British market is that it is really quite a limited range. The British consumer has got a palate that is quite focused. So the British consumer really focuses on fish-wise, actually focuses on salmon, cod, and haddock. Those are the three species that actually it does. Now, as a category, it is seeing growth. So we have seen strong growth in it as a category. The other thing that's really important for you to understand is that the frozen category is dominated, and it is dominated by two brands. Those brands are Birdseye and Young's. So outside of that, there is very little branded products out there. So we have in the category, we have Birdseye brand, the Young's brand, and then we have retailer brand. The category itself is really dominated by coated products as well. So when you are thinking about the British consumer, it's understanding what products are absolutely right for the consumer and how they like to have them. So it is breaded, battered, or it is fish fingers. So that is the vast majority of the sales. There are obviously frozen naked species that we have, but the vast majority of sales do go through these. Now, one of the things that's really important for you to think about actually is how are you going to get your products to the UK? And actually in the seafood market, it's quite different to most other markets. It's certainly very different to any of the other markets that I've worked with. And actually, you really have to think about what model it is that is correct. So is it indirect? Is it direct? How are you going to get your products? So that has to be the first step for you to be thinking about. If you are going to go direct, then we'll come on to the second, looking at the retailers. If you are going to go indirect, then you need to think about how am I going to get it in there? Which broker, which seafood specialist am I going to work with? Because in the UK market, there are some specialists in the seafood category, and they are either frozen and in chilled, that the retailers, I would call them preferred partners. Now, when you look at the UK market, what we have seen in the past 3 years is there has been a consolidation of the market. And actually, what we have seen is that the UK suppliers, so first of all, we had Seachill. So Seachill was an independent seafood supplier to the retailers, was bought by the Hilton Food Group. It's now part of a much larger group. Young's, again, was independent, has now been bought by Capvest, who also own Caro Foods, who are a pork supplier, who work with the retailers. So it's part of a much larger group. Only recently, what we saw was New England Seafood being acquired by Sealaska, which is a large US supplier. So you can see that this is what's happening in the UK market at the moment. Now, all three of those, Seachill, Young's, and New England Seafood, are major suppliers. So between them, they probably account for about 70 to 75% of the retailer's private label product. So if you want to work with the retailers on private label, do you work with one of these three major players, or are you going to be looking for somebody else that you can work with? There are plenty of other people out there, but these are the three major players who are already working, and they do have their preferred partners. So the preferred partners, certainly if I look at Seachill, their preferred partner will be Tesco. If I look at Young's, their preferred partners are Asda and Sainsbury's. New England Seafood, preferred partner will be Marks and Spencer's, Waitrose, and also Sainsbury's. So thinking about who your retailer is and then think about who are their partners is really important. What we have to think about actually is, how do you find the right retailer? Because all of the retailers have got very different markets, very different consumers, and very different ways of doing business. Now, the UK food and grocery market is forecast to grow by about 15% over the next 3 years. That will give it a value of almost 220 billion pounds. That's according to the IGD, which is a food and grocery research organization. So the market is extensive, and it is dominated by 4 retailers: Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, and Morrisons. So Tesco have got a market share of about 27%, Sainsbury's just under 16%, Asda just under 14%, and Morrisons 10%. Now, what you're all seeing is actually they have currently got about 70% of the market. So Tesco's annual sales are roughly about 53 billion pounds, Sainsbury's just under 30, Asda just over 20, and Morrisons just over 17. They've got the biggest volume, but they are renowned as being the most difficult to deal with. Now, why are they so difficult? Because they have got a lot that they are thinking about at the moment. What we are currently seeing in the UK market is we are seeing a price war campaign amongst all of the retailers. So it is not just the big 4 retailers, it is actually all of the retailers who are involved in price. So the main thing that they are thinking about is price, and that is why at the moment food prices in the UK are actually in deflation. Now, this is an artificial deflation because we know that there is pressure on prices everywhere. So this deflation is because the retailers are fighting over price. The other things that's constant they're thinking about at the moment, obviously, is Christmas. These next 2 weeks are the most important 2 weeks for the retailers. They're thinking about COVID. They are thinking about, actually, is there any stockpiling going on? The other thing they're thinking about actually is Brexit. So the impact of whether the UK will have a free trade agreement with Europe as of the 1st of January. These are all the things that the retailers are thinking about at the moment. What you have to think about is what type of retailer are you looking for? Some of the other retailers have got quite different approaches as well. So Aldi, a global, they're classed as a discounter, but actually they're not a discounter. They're basically their products and their costs are that much lower. So that's what they focus on. The Co-op are renowned as being an ethical retailer. Waitrose are more premium, as are Ocado. So it's really important for you to think about what type of retailer do you want to work with? What is it that you're looking for? Are you looking for volume? Are you looking to get your brand into a new country? Are you looking for long-term relationships? If you want tactical short-term buys, then working with some of the big 4 might be appropriate, because certainly that is not something that they are, long-term relationships is not something they are renowned for at the moment. And also think about, are you looking for a market for private label products? It's important to understand that if you are looking for a market that is about private label or brand, if you have got private label, then you have to have a partner. In this category, the brand is absolutely dominated by Birdseye and by Young's. They are the two brands. Between them, they probably have 60 to 70% share of the category in frozen seafood. Outside of them, there is very little branded manufacturers who are around. The other thing you have to think about is how long it takes to get a private label product to market in the UK. Under normal circumstances, it can take up to 12 months. The thing that you have to think about is how long would it take to get the UK retailers to agree for a private label product for your manufacturing sites. The reason why it takes such a long period of time is prior to any product coming out, there has to be certification, which I'll come on to shortly. But then the processes internally in all of the retailers take a long period of time because there are so many people involved. When you have a new product that is being launched in any of the retailers, then you have to have the category team involved. You have to have the buyers involved. You have to have merchandising and supply chain and logistics. All of these teams are involved in a decision of whether a product will be launched and how long it can take to get to the shelves. So that is why it takes a huge amount of time. And I would say if a retailer was going to work with one of your sites, I would say 12 months would be a minimum to get a product into a retailer. Because obviously, first off, you've got to get a relationship. And then once you've got that relationship, the retailer themselves have to go through all the processes to make sure that your site is audited and has got certification. Now, when we look at certification, each retailer has got their own different set of standards. It's really important that you understand that working with the British retailers can be expensive because each category has got their own standards. As a minimum, the retailers are looking for BRC grade A. So that is BRC is a recognized, credited, so that is an organization that all of the retailers use. And what they look for is BRC grade A. They would be an independent auditor that would come out and would deal with and look at your site. In seafood, you have to understand is, do the retailers want MSC? Do they want to have marine certification? So all the retailers look for different things. So some of the retailers will want an MSC certified. Some of them will look for different things. So you have to understand the other thing that all of the retailers will have is they will have their own standards of certification. So they will send out their own auditors to come and audit your site, to audit the whole of the supply chain, to make sure that you are up to the standards that they require when you are working with them. And each retailer has got a different set of standards. So it's really important that you understand what are those standards and also what are the costs of working with that retailer. Because all of the audits are costs that will be applied to you. So when a retailer comes to you and tells you that they need to have an audit, all the costs associated with that would be paid for by you as the supplier. Now, what you need to think about is actually what are you bringing? Now, at the moment, what we are seeing in the UK is a real focus on price. So is it price? If it's price, then are you looking for volume? What exactly is it that you're bringing? If it's price and volume, are you looking to take out a product, replicate products in the UK already? Or are you looking for innovation? Are you looking to bring innovation for some of your products into the UK and try and launch something new? What you have to think about is the retailers all want different things. Some of the retailers will be more open to innovation. Some of the retailers will be more open to value added products. Some of them will be looking at price. So understanding exactly what you are bringing means that when you have your approach to the retailers, you can think about what it is that you've got. What we talk about when you're thinking about your approach, we talk about a route map. So the route map starts off with that market assessment. So that's why I started off right at the start with looking at what is happening in the market. Then you would move on to the retail assessment. So which retailers would it be? You have to then think about the route. So the route for you, the route actually, is it direct or is it indirect? Only then would you then think about, okay, well, what product is right? What price would it need to be? What promotions would it have to have? Then you have to think about your consumer, the shopper. What is it that they'll be wanting? The proposal that you would have for your retailers would focus on the consumer, the shopper, the retailer strategy, category need, commercial benefit, and then how it's going to be implemented. On top of that, it's logistics capacity as well. You have to make sure that when you approach any of the retailers that your strategy is absolutely defined for that retailer. If you try and go in for an approach that feels as if it is just exactly the same for all of the retailers, that is something that the buyers will not appreciate, and they will not think that you've thought about them. The most important thing for you to do to try and improve your chance of success is thinking about what is it you are bringing and which retailer is that appropriate for. You also have to think about what is it that you are looking for in the UK. Most retailers in the UK work in a short-term way. The vast majority of retailers are not looking for change. They're not looking for new suppliers. So you have to think about which retailer might be, which retailer is looking at markets in a long-term way. What I put up here as 3 examples of retailers who I would say are actually looking at the market in a different way. So I would say that Aldi, Co-op and Waitrose are all different retailers. Now, with Aldi, yes, they are classed as a discounter, but they are also very creative and also are looking for markets. They're looking for new, they're looking for innovation. So they are quite prepared to work with new suppliers. So if you've got innovation, then working with Aldi is something that you can get significant volumes from. They are probably the most simple retailer to work with in the UK. Once you get and create a relationship with them, that relationship is likely to last for a long time, as long as you keep working with them and working collaboratively and don't let them down. The Co-op and Waitrose are much smaller, and I would say they're much more expensive to deal with because the volumes that you've got are not as high. And also the audits and the way that they work is much more expensive as well. But they are ones who are prepared to look at longer term relationships. They're prepared to look at doing things slightly differently. So thinking about which retailer and what you want is a crucial part of that. What you have to think about then is timing. The reason why timing is so important is because all of the retailers have a very limited amount of change that takes place in their stores. The most amount of change any of the retailers are likely to have would be 3 periods of change in a year. Normally, it would be no more than 2. The times that these periods of change would normally take place would be for our spring, summertime, and then into the autumn, winter. So normally you would see change on the category and the fixtures in March, April time, most likely April, and then again in September. So that is when innovation and change comes in and takes place within the fixture. Now, if you're just replacing a product that's there already, that is something that can happen at any time. So if you've got a product and you're looking at how can we have a better price than the one that's there already, then that is something that can happen at any point. So that's not reliant on any particular change. That is when the retailer has got a contract that is coming to an end, because that's what they have to make sure they're doing. When they have got a contract coming to an end, they have to make sure that the incumbent supplier is given something that we called reasonable notice. So if you're going to pick up a new contract and it's left an old supplier, the retailer has to give the old supplier reasonable notice to make sure that they've sold through the stock. What you have to think about as well is actually the type of buyers that there are. Now, in the UK at the moment, the vast majority of buyers in the UK are very inexperienced. They're more inexperienced now than they ever have been before. The reason why they are inexperienced is because over the past 5 or 10 years, what the retailers have done is they have got rid of the expensive, experienced buyers because of cost, and kept the more junior buyers, kept inexperienced buyers. So the buyers now are inexperienced. They've got larger categories, and most of them are not prepared to take much risk. So you have to understand which retailers, which buyers are prepared to understand the risk. The other thing that the buyers are unlikely to do is they are unlikely to have category knowledge. Now, I spent weeks of my time traveling the world understanding the seafood category. So I traveled all over the world. For me, it was one of the best parts of my job. That is not something that many retailers will do. Most retailers will not be sending their buyers on buying trips to find new products, to find new suppliers, to find new markets. So if that's not the case, if the retailers and the buyers are not thinking outside of the box, you have got to do that for them. Most of the retailers, most of the buyers, they rely on data. Now, we know that data does one thing. It looks backwards. Data is built up on what has happened. What you are bringing is something that will happen or can happen. So you are bringing change. That is not in the data, so you've got to bring something different. The other thing that some of the buyers can be, some of the buyers at times can be quite aggressive in their style. So understanding the buyer in that retailer is a key part of what you have to think about. Creating a relationship, understanding. That is if you are going to work direct. So understanding what's there. For me, one of the most important things that any new supplier must bring is passion. Passion for your products. Why will I want to work with you? What makes your products right for me? The passion that you can bring will set you apart from many of the other suppliers. If you think about what I've talked about in this category, it is dominated by 2 brands, Birdseye and Young's. In this category, it is dominated by 3 own label suppliers. What they don't bring is passion, because they have got significant sized businesses, and actually it is much more corporate that they have to deliver. So if you can bring passion, if you can bring innovation, if you can bring products which are right for the UK consumer, then that is something that the buyers will be interested in. You have to think, though, about what route are you going to use to get your products from Peru to the UK shelves. That's probably one of the biggest questions you have to think about. What are you going to do with your products? How are you going to get them onto the shelves? So I can see we have a couple of questions now. So what I suggest we do now actually is we look at the questions. So what questions you've got, because I've spoke to you for the past 30 minutes, but I'm sure that you've got more questions on what you'd like to understand from me and how you work with the UK retailers.
Thank you, Gerald, for this presentation. So the first question is from Marie. Are there any trade agreements between the UK and Peru? I believe this might be a question that could be answered by our director.
Yes, that's not a question that I can answer.
Yeah.
Ok. Gracias por la pregunta. Efectivamente, toda la relación comercial entre el Reino Unido y el Perú en este momento está bajo el acuerdo comercial que existe entre el Perú y la Unión Europea. Como ustedes saben, el Reino Unido deja de ser parte de la Unión Europea el 31 de diciembre de este año. En vista de esta ruptura, el gobierno del Perú y el gobierno británico negociaron un acuerdo que en realidad fue copiar los mismos criterios y condiciones de acceso que existe hoy entre la Unión Europea y el Perú, en un acuerdo que fue firmado en mayo del 2019 entre el Perú, Colombia, Ecuador y el Reino Unido, lo cual garantiza el acceso de los productos y la no interrupción de ese intercambio comercial a partir del 1 de enero del 2021. En el caso de los productos marítimos, los productos que Perú exporta, todos están liberados de aranceles. Por lo tanto, hay un acceso preferencial en ese sentido.
Gracias. Thank you. The next question is, being in the UK producer of fish and seafood, do you have any impressions regarding the attitude of UK consumers towards consuming seafood from Peru or South America?
Well, one of the areas that I did visit, and we actually, the UK does get seafood from, is Chile. So there are products, now the products are not branded, they're private label. And actually I went over there looking at salmon. And we also get, the UK gets mussels from Chile. So this is something that is happening already. So the UK consumer doesn't understand most times where the product comes from. So that actually is a wall that they see, because the products themselves are then in the retailer's branded packaging. So it will be a naked product, and actually for us it was mussels, or it might be mussels in a sauce that is in the retailer branded packaging. So they're not looking at products whether it comes from Peru or Chile or Alaska. So I think the UK consumer doesn't look at, it's not something that is important. So I think you've got just as much chance to have your products as any country. If you've got the products are right, if the price is right, the quality is right, there is no reason at all why the UK consumer would not buy your products.
Thank you. The next question would be, does my company need to be established in the UK to sell directly to a retailer?
It depends on what you're looking for. If you are looking to work direct, then really you don't have to be established, but what you probably would need to have is somewhere where you could store your products. So you'd need to have a warehouse. So you might have to think about actually, well, the time frame as well. So actually, how would the contact happen? So if you are going to work direct, who's going to be taking the orders? How are you going to build that relationship? So if you don't have somebody established in the UK, it's much harder to establish a relationship with that retailer. Now, if you're going to be working and your products are going to go through somebody else, they'll be doing it on your behalf. But if you're working direct with a retailer, the most important thing that you want is a relationship, and to be able to build that relationship. If you haven't built a long-term relationship with that retailer, then it'll be very much a trading relationship that you've got, not a long-term.
Thank you, Gerald. I've just noticed I missed a question from Francisco. Is there a list of the main seafood suppliers for retailers? So is there some sort of platform where people can access that information?
I'm not aware of that list. There might be one. So there are two main places where information that you can. So the first one is a trade magazine called The Grocer. And the other one is an online magazine, and it's basically called Undercurrent News. So Undercurrent News is focused purely on the seafood market, and it's not just the UK. It's focused on the global market, but there may be somewhere there where you could find more information specifically about the UK market. So those are they're probably the two places I would go to find out more information about the UK market.
Thank you. The next question again is from Marie. What are the most popular seafood products amongst UK consumers?
Well, the most popular ones are the ones I put up at the start. So it is salmon, it is cod, it is haddock. Then after that, it is prawns. So they are the most. They are the products which actually do dominate the UK consumers' palate.
We have a question from the CEO of Peru Naturals Corporation, Mr. Jorge Urena. We manufacture a healthy and nutritious line of gourmet canned mackerel that is presented in traditional Peruvian dishes. It's a ready-to-eat concept. What is the possibility of these products being accepted in the UK market? Do you think there is an interest for Peruvian products in the UK?
I think you'd have to think quite carefully about which retailer you approached, because that is that's a product that's quite specific and actually is non-generic to the UK market. So you would have to think about which retailer has got or is open to world foods, which retailer is open to foods which actually are slightly more interesting than the foods they would find on the shelf. But also they have to think about, well, what category will it go into with that retailer? So you have to think about a number of different things. So would it work? It could work, but you have to be quite clear. This is definitely something that you'd have to think about and understand the retailer first. You couldn't go and approach all the retailers with your proposition, because it would not be right for all of the retailers.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question as well, if you don't mind.
Certainly.
More directed towards certifications. If you could just give us a brief overview on
well,
on
the certifications, as I said, are quite unique to each retailer. But as a minimum, you'd be looking for BRC grade A. And then for seafood, each retailer might have a different requirement for their seafood. So understanding what that retailer needs. The way that you can do that is if you go onto the retailer's websites. So if it's Tesco, then you can look at Tesco and you can look for certifications. They will tell you what certifications are right for that retailer. So each one is quite different. So that is the place that I'll go to. So before you approach the retailer, have a look at their website, because on that website you will find and you'll see their corporate strategies. You will see if they are looking for organic, if they're looking for products globally sourced, what is important to them. So the retailer's website is a great place to start to get your understanding of the UK market and what they're looking for.
I have a question. We've talked about, or you've talked about, the channel distribution focused mainly on retailers, right?
Yeah.
But then there are other ways in which you can reach the market, not necessarily directly through retailers. You can go through other type of distributors, wholesalers, and you name it, right? So in the case of the seafood industry, what would be the best distribution channel, especially if you're a first-time supplier to the UK market? What would be the best way to reach the market, actually, in terms of the distribution channels?
It depends very much on the product. So you have to think about what product is it? So which is it? Species?
If you mind, let's talk about frozen prawns, frozen scallops. You know, Peru is big on those two products. So how about that?
So those two products, you're thinking then, okay, well, those are the two main ones. Which are the main the main routes to work with? So on there, what I'd be looking for is I'd be looking to work not direct with a retailer. I would actually be looking to work with whoever is supplying them at the moment. So in those two categories, because certainly on the prawns, that is a big category. And actually they've got established suppliers so they probably haven't looked at the Peruvian market. I would imagine that the suppliers themselves have looked at many different markets, but do they understand what Peru offers and what is different? So that's what that's where I'd be looking at. So I'd be looking at those three, mainly those three ones. So I'd be looking at Hilton, which is sea chill. I would be looking at Young's, and I'd be looking at New England Seafood. So those are the three main ones I'd be looking at. There is another company called the Big Prawn Company, specifically who deal with prawns, but it's understanding which one of those you might want to be approached and then getting them out. The best way to do it is to get them out to the sites in Peru so they can understand what you offer differently. That's what I did. So when I was out there looking for new suppliers, I went to the country of origin, looked at what I could find. So that is how you would want to be doing, is you want to be getting them over to Peru to see the sites, to understand the facilities and what you offer differently.
Thank you, Gerald. Before we get on to the next question asked by Marie Lumeya, we had Francisco Takahashi who raised his hand, so I'm just going to turn on his mic and allow him to ask the question directly. Thank you. Francisco, you turn on your mic.
Hello.
Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm good.
We have experience in the US working with importers that, you know, supply to several retailers like Walmart, Target, Sam's, Costco.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm trying to re-ask again about what are the main seafood suppliers in frozen seafood that we can contact to you know, assess the retail market. I think you mentioned Young's, right?
Yeah.
That's the main.
Well,
okay.
the three main ones are the ones that I talked about just now. So
right.
it's Young's, it's Sea Chill, and it's New England Seafood. They are the ones that dominate the supply of private label products to the UK. So if you're looking to supply private label products, then that's who you would be. They are the three main people that actually that dominate the supply in the UK.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. The next question is from Marie Lumeya. Are UK consumers price sensitive when purchasing seafood products, or is quality more important than selection criteria?
That depends on the retailer. So that's why it's really important to understand what is different. So are they price sensitive? Yes, but actually quality is really important to them. They understand in seafood that actually there are some products which are naturally more expensive. So seafood as a category is actually probably one of the more expensive proteins. So it is more expensive than chicken. it actually, the other thing, one of the things I have to think about for the UK consumer actually is seafood is seen, it is healthy. So actually one of the things that's important for the UK consumer actually is health. So when people think about health, they generally think about price a little bit less. So that's one of the reasons why seafood actually is important. One of the reasons why it's been growing over the past few years. So price is absolutely, it is price sensitive, but I would say probably seafood is less price sensitive than some of the others. If you think about how much a bag of prawns would be, a bag of prawns is actually quite expensive. But the UK consumer has been buying more and more prawns over the past few years because they're easy to use and they're healthy. So if you've got a product which is easy to use and is healthy, then it will be less price sensitive than some of the others.
Thank you, Gerald, for the questions.
I have a question. You know, the UK, it's they grow producer of scallops, right? And so there's not so many imports of scallops in the UK. Peru is big on scallops. So what are the chances for Peru to try to export into the UK market, if there is any? What are your thoughts on that?
I think if that is one of your main products, then I think absolutely that I would look to focus on that. So certainly that's I think when I look at what we saw coming out of Chile, it was mussels. That was what they focused on. So if scallops is the area that you are the experts in, where you've got the quality, you've got the price, then absolutely. And actually, the more focused that you are on a product, the better it will be. If you go to a retailer, if you go to anybody with a long list of saying, these are all the different things that we can do, and you go with a list of 10 or 12 products, the retailer is more likely to say, I'm not listening. Whereas if you can say, actually, well, these are the scallops that we have, this is the products that we have, this is the sizes that we have, this is the prices that we do, they're more likely to listen because you're being really focused. One of the things that the retailers don't have is a lot of time. So if you can make sure that when you go to them, you are using the time that you got well, and you've thought clearly about it beforehand, and you thought about the product, you thought about why scallops, why that retailer, then you're more likely to be listened to.
Thank you, Gerald. And if you could let the viewers know where can they reach you, or where can they reach your company as well? I think that would be helpful for those who are interested.
So there we go. I have my email, and if you scan the QR code, then actually that will take you to our website, so you can see what we do as well. And then it's also got a contact details on there as well.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we have any more questions. We do. Do you think Brexit is going to open up new opportunities on the imports of seafood from other places apart from the EU?
That very much depends on the outcome of Brexit. It depends on what agreements are made between the UK and the EU. So if there isn't a good agreement between the two, if there are tariffs on seafood, then it will open up. I can remember when I was working, I was buying seafood. We used to get our seafood, our prawns from Thailand because there weren't the tariffs. But then tariffs were then applied to Thailand, so we had to look to get our prawns somewhere else. So we then moved over to India and Indonesia. So looking at what is happening globally, looking at the price globally, is something that the retailers will be doing. So if the price is good coming out from Peru, then that will mean that actually the retailers and the suppliers who are looking for new markets will look at the Peruvian market.
Thank you. Just received another question from Nicolas Sarkovic. More or less, what are the costs of rebates the supermarkets charge on a direct sale?
Well, most supermarkets, they don't have rebates. Now, what we look at is a simple case cost. So it's quite different to how the US market will work. I think the US market quite often does work on rebates, but actually in the UK, the way that the retailers are working and have started to work over the past 5 years is a much simpler model. So it is an agreed delivered price, or it is an agreed X works price. That is how most of the retailers work. So it's a much simpler model that they work to nowadays.
Thank you. Just waiting to see if we have any more questions.
Okay, I think it's this time.
Actually, we just got one more. If we have time for one more.
Digamos.
I can't read that one, Christian.
Yeah.
So, but we like for everyone to see what they're asking. So if you can read that.
Perú en el pasado vendía muchas conservas de pescado, especialmente sardines, mackerel. Ahora contamos con atún en conservas. ¿Qué países son los proveedores de conservas de atún en el Reino Unido?
Yeah, now English, because he doesn't understand.
Yeah. So in the past, Peru has sold high quantities of canned seafood goods such as mackerel and sardines, but now we have an increased supply of tuna, also canned. What are the main countries that supply the UK with tuna, canned tuna?
I don't know what the main countries are. I do know that actually that tuna is a seafood that is looked at very rigorously by the retailers and how it is caught. So how and where it is caught is something that is really important to the retailers. So that is something to consider before you approach them.
Yeah, Miguel Mandriotto did follow up, also asking, there were companies called John West and Glenrick.
Yeah.
Well known if these still exist in the UK.
Absolutely. So certainly John West is not owned by John West now. It's owned by I think it's by a Japanese company. Glenrick is very much about sardines and those type of products, and instead they do still exist as brands to the UK. So if you wanted to approach them, then I'm sure that they are somebody who will be looking at new sources. That would be someone to approach direct rather than through the retailers then.
Thank you, Gerald. So I think that would be the end of the Q&A.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gerard, for taking the time to share your knowledge and experience in the industry this afternoon for us and this morning for Peru. I think it has been very useful. I myself learned a lot about things I didn't know about this market. We've been here for a while. I have been here for a year now. And the seafood industry is one that Peru has not explored that much. And our presence in this market is pretty much non-existent. So we as a Trade Commission, we wanted to do this because I think there are opportunities that we could explore. And I think your presentation helps to understand the dynamic of the market, how the distribution channel work, what are the expectations, what are the requirements. And I think this information is useful for everyone that is participating in this session. Muchas gracias a las empresas peruanas. Vamos a compartir con ustedes este video. Lo vamos a colgar en nuestra página web. Que Cristian, te pido por favor que pongas ahí la información de la página web. En un par de días la subiremos para que tengan la información a la mano. Pero en todo caso, cualquier pregunta, cualquier consulta que tengan, no duden por favor en contactarnos. Los datos de contacto están en la pantalla, no los veo.
Sí, ahí encuentran los datos de nuestra página web.
Perfecto, pero también está la información de contacto. Escribiendo a la cuenta de info, nosotros los podemos responder inmediatamente. En todo caso, les recomendamos que entren a nuestra página web si tienen alguna solicitud de algún tipo. En la sección de exportaciones al Reino Unido, al final del canal hay una sección para llenar un formulario y hacer las consultas del caso y nosotros les contestaremos inmediatamente. En todo caso, muchas gracias a todos por habernos acompañado en esta sesión. Continuaremos el próximo año con más talleres de capacitación en otras industrias y productos. Ya les vamos a ir informando un poco de las fechas exactas de las otras sesiones de capacitación que serán en el mes de enero. Muchas gracias a todos, felices fiestas y les agradecemos una vez más por participar. Adiós. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.